The line between a joke and a disaster is thinner than anyone expects. In these cases, the moment meant to get a laugh turns into a medical report, and the camera never stops recording. Today, we're looking at the 6 worst pranks that crossed that line. It was June 22nd, 2016, in a quiet residential area on the outskirts of Chiang Mai, Thailand. Night had settled in, and the neighborhood was calm, broken only by insects and distant traffic. An active rail line ran behind the homes, ungated, familiar, and often ignored by residents. Narin Chayasit had just turned 24. He worked as a junior drafting assistant for a small construction firm in central Thailand, and still lived with his parents a few streets from his childhood home. Co-workers described him as reliable and quiet, someone who showed up early and left on time. Friends said he didn't enjoy pranks and usually avoided surprises, but he trusted the people closest to him. When his birthday came up, he tried to downplay it. The group decided to celebrate anyway. According to later police interviews, the plan was meant to feel dramatic but harmless. A few friends suggested a surprise party at a nearby house. Before revealing it, they wanted to scare him briefly, something they thought would make the reveal more memorable. The idea was to blindfold Narin, bring him near the railway line at the edge of their neighborhood, let him hear a train approaching, then remove the blindfold and explain the joke. Several friends said they had crossed that section of track many times and believed trains followed a predictable schedule. One friend set a phone on a concrete ledge beside the tracks to record the moment. Another held a phone from the side. Witnesses later said Narin was told they were stopping briefly on the way to dinner. When they reached the rail corridor, someone tied a cloth over his eyes. He laughed and asked where they were. One friend told him to relax and just stand still. They guided him forward. According to the video reviewed later, his feet were positioned between the rails. The blindfold stayed in place. Narin asked again what was happening. A friend standing behind him said it would make sense in a second. At first, the area was quiet. Then a distant train horn sounded, low and muffled. Several friends later said they felt a vibration underfoot and assumed they still had time. As the seconds passed, the horn sounded again, louder and closer. One witness later said that was the moment he realized the train was much nearer than they expected. On the phone recording, a single headlight appeared around the curve, cutting through the trees along the track. At that point, Narin pulled his blindfold away and saw the train. According to witness statements, he froze immediately. His shoulders tensed, and his arms stiffened at his sides. He did not step back or turn away. The recording captured someone urging him to move, assuming he would react once he understood what was happening. Instead, he stood in place, eyes fixed down the track. One friend later told police he thought Narin was still processing the scare, until the horn became continuous and the vibration underfoot intensified. Another reached out toward him, calling his name, but stopped when the train entered full view at speed, leaving no time to intervene. The train engineer later reported seeing a figure on the tracks and immediately sounding the horn while applying emergency brakes. Railway data showed the train was traveling about 35 miles per hour. The distance was too short. The impact occurred seconds later. Narin was struck and thrown clear of the tracks. The fixed phone jolted and tipped. The handheld camera dropped, capturing gravel, shoes moving frantically, and shouting. Neighbors nearby heard the horn and ran toward the crossing. Friends yelled for someone to call emergency services. The train came to a stop several hundred feet down the line. Responders arrived within minutes, but Narin's injuries were severe. He was pronounced dead at the scene. The medical examiner ruled the cause of death as multiple traumatic injuries consistent with a train collision. There were no signs of alcohol or drugs. The report noted no defensive injuries or evidence of attempted escape, consistent with a freeze response under extreme fear. Police reviewed both phone recordings in full and interviewed each friend separately. Several admitted they assumed Narin would move on his own. Charges were filed for reckless endangerment, resulting in death against 2 individuals involved in positioning him on the tracks. Both later received suspended sentences, citing negligence rather than intent. The birthday decorations stayed in their boxes. In the months that followed, the informal crossing was fenced and warning signs were installed. Railway officials later referenced the case in safety briefings, emphasizing that trains cannot stop quickly and that moments of hesitation near active tracks can be fatal. It was November 18, 2016, in Akron, Ohio, during the final hour of a slow afternoon shift at a small office supply warehouse. Orders had tapered off, supervisors were distracted with paperwork, and employees were passing time between cleanup tasks, an environment where attention slipped and jokes began to replace routine. Among the staff was Eric Dalton, 32 years old. He worked as an inventory clerk, responsible for checking incoming boxes, updating stock sheets, and labeling outgoing orders. Eric had been with the company for just under a year. He was known as reliable, quiet, and methodical, someone who followed procedures and rarely joined in on office humor. He usually carried a pen clipped to his shirt pocket and a small clipboard for counts, even when moving between aisles. The warehouse was a plain setup: concrete floors, metal shelving, rolling carts, and tight aisles between pallets. Safety rules focused on equipment, not behavior, and small pranks were common and largely ignored. Earlier that week, coworkers joked about Eric's habit of walking fast while reading inventory sheets. During a shift lull, two of them tied his shoelaces together while he was bent over, planning to undo them as soon as he noticed. Eric finished his count and straightened up, clipboard under one arm, pen still clipped near his chest. He took a step forward. CCTV footage from the aisle showed what happened next in real time. His feet caught instantly. With his shoes bound, his stride collapsed into a short, uncontrolled stumble. His upper body pitched forward. He did not have time to put his hands out. As he fell, the clipboard slipped free. His right shoulder struck first, twisting his body sideways. The pen, clipped high on his shirt near the collar and angled upward, was forced inward as his head pitched forward. The tip entered his left eye at an angle, penetrating the socket. His head struck the concrete floor a fraction of a second later. The impact was audible on the recording. The footage showed Eric's body come to rest face down, legs entangled, one arm trapped beneath him. He did not move afterward. Nearby activity in the aisle ceased, and the recording captured coworkers entering the frame and then stepping back. Emergency services were contacted shortly after. Paramedics arrived approximately 6 minutes later and were guided straight to the aisle. They rolled Eric onto his side and assessed him on the floor. Blood was visible around his face, and the pen was lodged deeply. He showed no response. Responders initiated life-saving measures, but the injury was catastrophic. Eric was pronounced dead at the scene. The medical examiner ruled the cause of death a penetrating head injury. The pen entered through the left eye, causing immediate and catastrophic brain damage. The fall itself was contributory, but not fatal. Investigators reviewed CCTV footage and concluded that the tied shoelaces directly caused the loss of balance and fall. 2 coworkers were formally charged with involuntary manslaughter and later accepted plea agreements, resulting in suspended sentences and probation. Following the incident, the company prohibited all pranks, updated safety policies to address behavioral risks, and incorporated the footage into internal safety training. It was January 12, 2018, in Quezon City, Philippines, just before noon, inside a small apartment kitchen. The space was tight and ordinary, appliances humming as usual. A phone sat propped on the counter, recording continuously, capturing what was meant to be a harmless moment as it unfolded without pause. Paulo Reyes was 34 years old. He worked as an office clerk for a logistics company, spending long days handling paperwork and inventory reports. At home, he preferred simple routines, quick meals, short videos, and quiet time before heading back out. He and his wife occasionally filmed light-hearted prank clips in their kitchen. Nothing elaborate, just everyday moments meant to entertain friends in private chats. None of their videos involved stunts or planning. The phone was usually set down, recording continuously. That morning, Paulo stood near the counter, peeling a banana. He leaned slightly forward, resting his weight on one foot, scrolling briefly on his phone between bites. His wife stood a few feet away, holding her own phone pointed toward him. The camera angle captured his upper body, the counter, and part of the tiled floor. There was no warning, no setup visible in the frame. As Paulo raised the banana toward his mouth, his wife stepped closer and pushed his head forward in a sudden motion. The push was quick and forceful enough to interrupt his movement mid-bite. The banana entered his mouth deeper than intended and lodged immediately. The phone recorded the moment his body stiffened. Paulo staggered back half a step. His hands flew to his throat. The banana blocked his airway, preventing him from breathing or speaking. The camera audio picked up harsh coughing sounds that quickly turned silent and strained. He bent forward at the waist, then straightened again, trying to draw air that would not come. The phone kept recording as laughter dropped away. Paulo's coughing weakened. He braced against the counter, unable to draw air. His face flushed, his chest strained, and then his knees gave out. He slid down and collapsed onto the kitchen floor as the phone was set down nearby. The footage shows brief twitching as his body struggled, then stillness. His wife shouted for help and tried to clear his airway, but the timestamps show the movement slowed and became minimal within the next minute. A neighbor contacted emergency services after hearing shouting. Dispatch logs show the call at 11:46 a.m. Paramedics arrived within minutes and attempted airway support on the kitchen floor, but Paulo showed no response and was pronounced dead at the scene. The medical examiner ruled the cause of death as asphyxia caused by a complete airway blockage. The banana became lodged deep in the airway, triggering a reflex closure and preventing effective breathing. There were no injuries or medical conditions that contributed. Police reviewed the phone footage, classified the death as accidental, and secured the video as evidence without filing charges. In the weeks that followed, local health agencies cited the case in advisories about choking risks and food-related pranks. It was June 25, 2016 in Tampa, Florida, during a crowded house party marking the start of summer. Music played, people drifted between rooms, and attention stayed outside where fireworks were being prepared. Inside the house, a separate joke unfolded, one that no one was watching closely enough to stop. One of the guests was Alex Moreno, 23 years old. He worked part-time at a sporting goods store and shared an apartment nearby with two roommates. Friends described him as outgoing and willing to go along with jokes, especially when alcohol was involved. He had no medical conditions and was considered healthy. That night, Alex had been drinking but was still alert and moving around the house, talking with guests. The home belonged to a friend who was moving out at the end of the month. Cardboard boxes and packed items lined the hallway, including a large hard-shell suitcase left open near the stairs. Earlier in the evening, someone joked about how big it was. Alex, laughing, climbed inside to prove he could fit. Several people gathered around, filming briefly on their phones. At first, the suitcase was left open. Alex curled his knees toward his chest, joking and calling out to people nearby. A friend reached down and pulled the zipper partway, stopping at Alex's waist. Someone else zipped it a little farther, still laughing. The zipper closed fully a few seconds later. At nearly the same moment, fireworks were lit outside. A group rushed toward the front yard, cheering and filming the sparks. Music volume increased. The house emptied quickly, leaving the hallway quiet. The suitcase remained upright against the wall. Inside the suitcase, Alex began shifting almost immediately. The hard shell restricted movement, forcing his knees toward his chest. Once fully zipped, airflow was limited to small gaps along the zipper and seams. The fabric lining dampened sound, muting any movement from inside. Video recorded outside during the fireworks later captured faint, irregular thumping coming from inside the house, barely audible beneath music and crowd noise. No one reacted. Most guests were focused on filming the display or talking in the yard. No one returned indoors for several minutes. As time passed, the confined space restricted chest expansion and ventilation. Carbon dioxide rapidly accumulated inside the suitcase, while heat and panic increased oxygen demand, making effective breathing progressively harder. According to the medical review, loss of coordination and strength would likely follow within minutes. Movements inside the suitcase slowed. At some point, the case tipped slightly onto its side, likely from internal shifting. After that, there were no further sounds. Nearly 40 minutes later, a guest went back inside to grab a drink and noticed the suitcase in the living room. Someone joked about Alex still being inside. The zipper was pulled open, but Alex did not respond. Emergency services were called immediately. Paramedics arrived within 8 minutes and attempted resuscitation on the living room floor. There were no signs of recovery. Alex was pronounced dead at the scene. The medical examiner ruled the death as asphyxia from oxygen deprivation. There were no injuries, trauma, or toxic substances involved. Investigators reviewed phone videos and nearby security footage and classified the incident as a fatal prank caused by reckless behavior. No charges were filed. In the aftermath, the homeowner canceled the move-out party and cooperated fully with investigators. Local fire safety officials later cited the case in public advisories about the dangers of enclosed spaces and the speed at which oxygen loss can occur. The suitcase was logged as evidence and later destroyed. Friends removed party videos from social media within days. Clips of the fireworks remained online briefly before being taken down. It was October 14th, 2017, in Port Charlotte, Florida, during a crowded house party marking the start of the Halloween season. Music spilled into the street as guests moved between the living room, backyard, and driveway. Fireworks popped near the curb, drawing most people outside while smaller pranks continued inside without much attention. Lena Cruz was 21 years old, a college student studying hospitality management. She worked part-time at a cafe and spent weekends with the same group of friends she'd known since high school. They often filmed short prank clips for social media. Simple scares, costumes, and reactions meant to be funny rather than elaborate. With Halloween weekend approaching, the group had been talking about ideas that might get more attention. That night, someone suggested a roadside scare. Lena volunteered to wear a long white dress and stand briefly in the road so passing drivers would see a ghost-like figure in their headlights. One friend would film from the shoulder. The plan was for Lena to step out, wait a second, then move back as the car slowed. They assumed drivers would brake when they saw her, and that the scare would last only a moment. What they failed to account for was the road itself. The street curved slightly, had no paved shoulder, and was bordered by a shallow drainage ditch on one side and a fixed concrete culvert marker on the other. Traffic was light, but cars moved quickly along the unlit connector road, where drivers routinely exceeded posted limits late at night when the street appeared empty. Lena changed behind a parked motorcycle, pulling on a long white dress and letting her hair hang loose. A phone was set a few yards back, aimed toward the curve in the road. Headlights appeared in the distance, growing brighter as a car approached its speed. On video, Lena steps off the pavement, lifting her arms slightly as the dress catches the light. The car does not slow down. The headlights jerk sideways as the driver swerves. The front corner of the vehicle strikes her almost instantly, throwing her onto the road as the car veers into a concrete post and grinds to a stop. Audio on the recording shifts abruptly as the camera jolts and the person filming moves toward the roadway. Lena lies motionless near the impact point, her dress darkening against the asphalt. The driver stumbles out of the car, shouting for help as the engine clicks and goes quiet. Lena's friends place the emergency call immediately, giving the location and reporting a pedestrian strike. The phone continues recording as the group backs away from the road. Responders arrive within minutes and confirm Lena shows no signs of life. The driver is treated at the scene for minor injuries. The medical examiner ruled Lena's death the result of multiple blunt force injuries sustained on impact. Investigators determined the driver swerved to avoid a sudden obstruction on an unlit road and had less than 2 seconds to react. Phone footage confirmed Lena entered the lane moments before the collision, and the driver was cleared of wrongdoing. Investigators also determined that Lena had volunteered for the prank and was not directed or physically restrained by others. No charges were filed against her friends. In the days that followed, local authorities issued warnings urging residents to avoid roadside pranks and costumes near traffic. The video circulated briefly online before being removed by the platform for violating safety policies. The stretch of road remained unchanged, though warning signs were later added nearby. It was April 17, 2019, in Toledo, Ohio, during a mandatory spring assembly at a public high school. Nearly the entire student body filled the auditorium for testing announcements. Seats and aisles were packed, exits crowded, and staff focused on schedules. It appeared routine, but the space left little room for error. Evan Brooks was 14 years old, a freshman who had transferred earlier that year. He was smaller than most of the students around him and still learning how to navigate the school's layout. Evan was quiet, kept to a small group of friends, and usually chose seats near exits, so he could leave quickly when assemblies ended. That afternoon, he sat near the rear auditorium doors that opened directly into a concrete stairwell leading down to the main hallway. The school had held assemblies like this many times before. The building was older, with narrow stairwells designed decades earlier, before current crowd flow standards were common. Fire alarms were positioned near exits, and staff relied on students following instructions during drills. What administrators did not know was that two upperclassmen seated near the back had planned a prank. They intended to pull the fire alarm, film the reaction on a phone, and post the chaos online. They assumed teachers would stop the movement quickly, as they had during past drills. As the final announcements were being read, a phone camera in the back row began recording. The view showed rows of students standing, bags at their feet, and the rear exit doors only a few steps away. Seconds later, the fire alarm sounded. The sharp, continuous tone cut through the auditorium, louder than the speakers. Students reacted immediately. The phone footage captured heads turning, chairs scraping, and bodies pushing toward the nearest exits. Shouting replaced conversation. The rear doors swung open, and the flow of students poured into the stairwell. Hallway CCTV captured what happened next. The stairwell filled almost instantly, far beyond its intended capacity. Students moved downward shoulder to shoulder, backpacks pressed tight. Near the top of the stairs, Evan stepped forward with the crowd. His foot caught on the edge of a step as someone behind him pushed. He stumbled, then fell forward onto the concrete. The surge did not stop. Students behind him, unable to see what happened, tripped over his body. Others were forced forward by the pressure from above. Evan was pushed sideways into the metal railing lining the stairwell. CCTV showed the railing flexing as bodies pressed against it. The phone video captured the sound of shoes slipping, students yelling to stop, and metal creaking under strain. Within seconds, Evan was pinned. His chest was compressed against the railing as the crowd continued moving downward. Those closest tried to pull back, but the force from behind made it impossible. The railing bent further, trapping him in place. The phone footage showed arms reaching, hands slipping, and faces panicked as the situation spiraled beyond control. Emergency services were called immediately. Paramedics arrived shortly after and worked in the stairwell, clearing students away. When Evan was pulled free and assessed on the floor, he showed no signs of breathing. The medical examiner ruled Evan's death as compressive asphyxia. Sustained crowd pressure crushed his chest, preventing normal breathing. There were no major external injuries. Death resulted from a lack of oxygen during the surge. Review of phone video and hallway CCTV traced the event from the alarm pull to the stairwell overload. The student responsible was charged in juvenile court with involuntary manslaughter. The school later altered assembly procedures, redesigned stairwell flow, and updated fire alarm protocols using the footage as a safety example. Thanks for watching. Like this video? Click here.